Well, we're just interrupting that programme to bring you a breaking news update, because 3 days after a deadly stabbing spree in Saskatchewan province in Canada, the surviving suspect, Miles Sanderson's whereabouts remain unknown. He's thought to be wounded but still very dangerous. He, along with his brother, who was found dead on Monday, have been the target of a major police manhunt after 10 people were killed and 18 were injured. A press conference is just starting and we can join them there in Canada to listen to what the police and relatives of the victims of the stabbing spree are saying. Let's listen in.
Chuck Thomas, Goodvoice, sorry. So rattled today, sorry Chuck. And Sean Burns, a good family friend of our sister and our nephew. I want to start out by saying we don't want this to be glorified. We don't want this to be something that people are, thinking negatively about our family members. Our family members today, and Brian will show you a picture of his wife of 15 years, being together for 30 years, and his oldest son. So this is our sister, Bonnie Goodvoice-Burns, his oldest son, Gregory Burns, and in the crowd today we have Bonnie and Brian's three other boys, Dason, Mason, and Grayson. Today we're going to do a three-step process here, which is actually talk about our family members, about the people they were, so people understand the loving, caring person that Bonnie was. First and foremost, we have two communities that are very close here, which is my community, and a lot of my family are in here, aunts, uncles of Bonnie, from the Wesley Cree Nation. We are close to the James Smith Cree Nation people, through sports, through activities, through ceremony, through everything that we've done in our lives. And right now, it's a difficult time for our families. The second piece that we're going to talk about is, I know a lot of people are out there wondering what happened. Well, honestly, we don't know. I'm going to try to piece together what I know, because I was at the scene on Sunday with Brian. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, and some of it will be a little bit harsh to hear, but we're going to speak the truth. The third thing is the impact of what's happening to the other three children that are here with us today, and Brian and his family, and the support that we need for a GoFundMe page to help with some long-term trauma here. So that's kind of the three-step process. I've got my communications person here, Sean. I'm not sure if there wants to be a scrum after, but I'm asking the media to be respectful of who I am. It's not about me. Please don't use my title. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a title. This is about our family. This is about the horrible, senseless act that took one of our family members away, two of our family members away. What I want to talk about is Bonnie Lee Goodvoice. She's a member of the Wahpeton Dakota First Nation. She was a Dakota woman, and she still is a Dakota woman. In 1990, it's a long time ago, she met one of my crazy buddies here, Brian, and I don't know, but I was talking to my uncle the other day, and I said, yeah, I was talking to Brian, and he's like, who the heck's Brian? It's like, we all know him as Buggy, right? Because that sense of laughter that you're hearing right now is what Bonnie and Brian did all the time, was laugh and joke, and those are the things that we need to remember. They've been married for 15 years. She moved to the community at James Smith Cree Nation. They've got a home. They've started raising their family, which is Brian's late son here, Gregory, who is 28 years old. We've got Dason, who's 13 years old, and Mason, I think, is 11, and I was going to call him by his nickname, Pablo. Pablo, yeah. Grayson. So I don't know how he got that name, but we know him as Pablo, right? So this is how it is in our country where we grow up. It's all about relationships. It's all about family. It's all about nicknames. It's all about laughter. It's all about joy. It's all about humbleness. One of the things that I can say about my sister and Chuck's daughter and our niece and our relative, family came first, her family. We always talk about in First Nations culture the matriarchal society. She lived that. She was always at home with her children while Brian was out there working, playing sports. She was always with her family. She was the caretaker of her home. They had a beautiful home. And that's what we want people to remember her as. She's not a victim. She's a hero. And what you'll hear, secondly, is why she's a hero. And when we talk about Brian and Bonnie, it goes unnoticed for all the work that they did in their community of James Smith Cree Nation. Bonnie was working at the school for the last few years, providing for her family. She was also a foster parent. She was also a foster parent of 2 kids in her care at the time of this terrible incident. So raising about 6 kids and all the numerous kids that she helped before. She always put other people before her. That's what we want people to remember. We want people to remember how she made you laugh, how she told stories at Christmas functions, at kids' birthdays, at weddings, at celebrations. That's the reality. And when we talk about what Bonnie brought to her community, the things that I noticed the day that I was at the scene was everybody came up and talked about what she did for the James Smith community. She was married into that community. She would help volunteer at cooking, at doing whatever she had to do, and she'd make Brian come along all the time, right? Because they did things together. And when we see this and we listen, we have to remember those things, because the situation that occurred shouldn't happen to anyone. No one whatsoever. You know, I sit back and I watch and I listen and I watch these things on TV, and I'm like, man, oh man, how did this happen to our family? Why did it happen? We have no answers. But what we can talk about is what family means to all of us, and what Bonnie, and I don't even know why I keep calling Gregory, because his name's Jonesy. That's how we knew him, as Jonesy. That was his nickname. And when we think about myself as her brother, I was hardly in my sister's life. She had her family, I had my family, but every time our side of the family got together, she was always there at Christmas and that kind of stuff, bringing the boys. And I'd always argue with Pablo about who's the boss is. And today he told me he's the boss and still hasn't given me a reason why, but I understand. And I take that direction because the most important thing to my sister and to our niece and to Brian's wife was the kids. She made every effort to provide for her family. She was sober for 15 years of her life. And those are the things we want to remember. We want to remember how she made an impact in your lives as individuals, how she made an impact in your family. And today when we sit up here, I could be replaced by any one of my family, and they know that, but I have to take on the torch of the responsibility of our family. And it's not about leadership, because when I look in this room, it doesn't matter if you have a title or not, you're all leaders of your families, of people. And we've got to remember that. We're all human. And I keep thinking about this all the time. I'm just a kid from the res. And why did this happen to our family? Why did this happen to all families? And I want to make it very clear that we're not talking about any other families here, because that's not our place, that's not our right. We're talking about our family, and I think the public needs to know who Bonnie Goodvoice-Burns was. She was a member that made a difference in people's lives. She was a sober person. You go into her home, it was a beautiful home. It was filled with love and care. And the children always came first. And when we talk about that, we talk about our nephew or the son, the grandson, 28-year-old boy. His life taken away from us. This young man had opportunities to work. He was fully employable. He had lots of tickets and opportunities. He was a great kid. He worked in the community. He built houses. He did whatever he could for his family and trying to help his mom and his dad and take care of his three brothers. And those are the things we want people to recognize and remember. During this difficult time, we're just climbing a mountain now as a family, both of our communities. And that mountain is the devastation of what happened to our family member.
Well, a very emotional, very moving press conference there by the families of the victims of that stabbing spree in Saskatchewan province in Canada. It happened 3 days ago. One of the suspects still at large, and police say to be considered dangerous. We were just hearing some tributes to the victims from members of their community. We can speak to our North America correspondent now, Nomia Iqbal, who's in Melfort in Saskatchewan. I think a sense there from what they were saying and the way they were saying it, Nomia, is just how close members of that community are and how much this has shaken them.
Yes, and we've seen that for ourselves. We went to the James Smith Cree Nation, which is a a community of about 2,000 indigenous people. It's where most of the victims were from. It's where Bonnie Burns, this woman that the family are talking about, 48 years of age, lived. And when we spoke to people there, of course, they were understandably shocked by what happened. And it's worth bearing in mind that overall Canada is shocked because these sorts of mass killings just do not happen like this. And we hadn't really heard officially from the families. They really wanted to keep themselves. And of course, remember the killer is still, the alleged killer is still on the loose, and so people are being warned to stay indoors. There was concern by the police that Miles Sanderson may have been seen in the James Smith Cree Nation. So people were keeping themselves to themselves, not wanting to really talk, wanting to deal with this unimaginable grief. But we have heard from the brother there of Bonnie Burns, speaking about her and what she meant to the community, describing her as this important matriarch, this caretaker. Her son, we also, has been confirmed, 28-year-old Gregory Burns was also killed as well. And I think what really sort of stands out in what they're saying is that these people are not victims, they are heroes, and that's something that that family members have really wanted to emphasise throughout.
And I suppose the difficulty is with tracking down the surviving suspect behind this is the distances involved and in places how sparsely populated the area, the parts of the province must be, and how difficult it would be to locate someone if they were determined not to be found.
Absolutely right. I mean, we're talking about, the province is about the size of half of Europe, and so you do have police out and about. We see the police cars, we see the manhunt happening, but there's conflicting reports of where this man is. So every now and again we get these piercing alerts on our mobile phones which basically warn us of a possible sighting of Miles Sanderson. So originally there was a warning saying that he'd been seen in the provincial capital of Regina, which is around about 3 hours from here. And so the hunt was being concentrated there. And then there was an alert that he might be in the James Smith Cree Nation, where most of the victims live, but then that turned out to be a false alarm as well. So it is a big task for the police here. The Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said that he will provide whatever resources the federal government needs to in order to end this, in order to try and resolve this and get the remaining suspect, Miles Sanderson, who has already been charged as well. So that hunt is still very much continuing. As I mentioned, people are being told to stay indoors and just be mindful of their safety. But the Prime Minister has also urged people to quote him, to grieve without fear.
And Nomia, it's sad to say that you and I have both covered attacks and situations like this before, and one of the things that will often be done is a trawl of computers belonging to the suspects, of social media, to try and get a hint of what might have motivated them to do something so heinous. Is there any sense yet of that being done, and any sign of motive?
There's lots of speculation at the moment about Miles Sanderson and his brother Damien Sanderson, who was found dead earlier in the week. He was found dead in the James Smith Cree Nation, and we don't know the full details of what happened to him. All police have told us so far is that the wounds that he had were not self-inflicted. But we do know that Miles Sanderson was known to the police since May, that they've been looking for him. I spoke to one man in the James Smith community, and he said to me that people, and I'm quoting him, he said to me that people do know this man, that he is someone that is known to the community. But the actual motivation, what happened, what led to this man and his brother to attack 10 people, to kill 10 people in a series of stabbings and injure 18 others, remember, is just not known at the moment. And police, when they're asked about that motive, they haven't come out with any reason yet for it. So as I say, there is lots of speculation, there's lots of reports of what it might be, what the underlying reasons might be, underlying reasons in some of these remote communities, but as of yet there is no official reason that we've been given.
You mentioned there those who were wounded in these stabbings. Of course, we must keep in mind, as well as the 10 who were stabbed to death, there were further, 18 who were wounded. Do we have any update on their situation, how they're doing?
Police won't release their identity. So today we got an official list of the identities of those who were killed, but they have said, they've been very straightforward about it. They will not give a list of those who were injured. So we don't know their names. We don't even know their ages. But they did confirm that one of the injured is a teenage boy. But that's all we know.
OK, Nomia, thank you very much indeed for that. Nomia Iqbal there for us in Saskatchewan on the latest on, well, the manhunt and the investigation into that stabbing spree which took place 3 days ago in the Canadian province. The the surviving suspects' whereabouts still unknown, and we were just hearing from some of the families of the victims. Just to remind you, 10 people were stabbed to death, a further 18 were injured, and as Nomia was saying there, we know the names and the ages of the victims, the ones who were fatally stabbed. They range in age from 23 to 78, and their families, of course, desperate for the perpetrator or perpetrators to be found and brought to justice, and of course for the safety of other people.